Hello YouTube, this is Chris, and I just wanted to do a review of The Lord of the Rings. I started reading this because, of course, we've all seen the trilogy in the movies, and of course people always say that the book is better. And I've gotten through the first book, or the first half of the Fellowship of the Ring, and there are definitely a lot of things that are different from the movie. More detail, characters, and things just happen in a different sequence or very differently or not at all. So I just wanted to go through the 6 chapters that I have here. So this is going to be a long video, and I have notes on each chapter that I want to talk about. So if you don't have time, I totally understand, but this is my first time delving into the book. And it's always been popular. It was popular when I was in middle school and certainly in high school. But I was just never into fantasy. So I never read it. I was reading Star Trek novels and Star Wars stuff and all of that. But anyway, like the first chapter of The Lord of the Rings, the prologue talks about hobbits. And it gives me a lot more information about hobbits. And I didn't know that there were different kinds. So it says that they're short and stout, and they like peace and quiet and good tilled earth, and they have a skill at avoiding the big folk, where some of the big folk think that they have like magical powers to disappear. And nobody knows where they came from, and they didn't have written records. So their records start mainly after moving to the Shire, and they're fond of yellow and green. So of course, since I've seen the old animation of Lord of the Rings from the 70s, so makes sense. And I didn't know there's 3 kinds of hobbits. There's Harfoots, Stores, and Fallowhides. And the Harfoots are browner of skin and smaller and beardless. The Stores are broader and heavier build. And the Fallowhides are fairer skin and hair like Frodo and Bilbo. And they're more friendly with elves. They forgot the past, and they got used to plenty and thought it was normal, and they became sheltered. So that makes sense. That could be like society now, where we become a little sheltered. And it says hobbits were good with bows and arrows, which I don't think we saw in any of the movies, but that might have been cool to see. So it says hobbits live in holes, but poor ones lived in the ground. And the more well-to-do hobbits lived in homes above the ground, and these were the hobbits that did more like they were more in like the trades, smiths and stuff like that. And it talks about the pipeweed, which they smoke, which in the movie it kind of intimates that it's like something like a narcotic, more like marijuana, but this in the book says it's like nicotine or something like that. So it's interesting also that in the recap of The Hobbit, that Tolkien in 2 pages gave such an engrossing synopsis of the story of The Hobbit that you just feel like you know the whole story in just those couple of pages, and it really pulls you in. Now, when it starts the Fellowship of the Ring, it opens with Bilbo's birthday party and people noticing that he doesn't really age. And it also goes into him adopting Frodo as his heir. And they tell a story about Frodo's parents drowning when he was a kid. So I didn't know that, and that's kind of sad. So Gandalf arrives, but different from the movie, he just pulls up to Bilbo's house and starts unloading fireworks for the party and goes inside. And after the party, Bilbo goes to leave, but he and Gandalf have a fight over him leaving the ring or not. So Bilbo calls the ring precious a few times before Gandalf gets him to finally leave it. Bilbo leaves with three dwarfs to help him on his trip. So then Frodo shows up to take possession of Bag End, which is his inheritance, and to see the presents being given out, and to fight off other hobbits from taking everything that isn't nailed down. And Merry is there, so he makes an early appearance. And Gandalf shows up and asks Frodo about the ring and where it is, and warns him not to use it while he goes away to investigate, but to look for him at an unlikely time, which is such a Gandalf thing to say. Now, this is where it gets interesting to me, because there's a huge time jump of 15 years. Because Frodo turns 50 and people begin noticing that he is pretty well preserved. So Frodo gets the feeling to go explore, but not yet. Hobbits start seeing elves and dwarves in their lands along the road, and news of strange happenings in Mordor. So we meet Sam at an inn, and he's talking to his cousin about seeing a walking tree in Ent. And Gandalf explains to Frodo about the ring and his suspicions it's actually the One Ring of Power, and that Sauron would love to enslave the hobbits in the Shire because they're happy and free, so he would love to just have them suffer. Gandalf puts the ring in the fire, and the writing is revealed. All this story in just 50 pages. So Sauron has moved from the forest of Mirkwood back to the towers of Mordor. And Gandalf tells the history of Gollum, once Smeagol, and Deagol, about how Deagol found the ring while fishing, and on shore Smeagol immediately said he wanted it and then killed his friend for it. And it talks about how he used it for evil and sneaky deeds, to steal and learn people's secrets. He was banished eventually and found a home in the mountains and began his change. He started not liking the sun too much, so he headed underground. And Gandalf tells about hunting for Gollum to question him, and Aragorn helping to find him. And Sauron was gathering all dark things to Mordor, and that's where Sauron learned of the Shire and the Baggins name. So Frodo is being a little dense here to me, because he keeps talking about destroying the ring. Why didn't Gandalf know about it? He didn't fully believe Gollum's history, so he said Bilbo should have killed Gollum, but Gandalf says it was pity that stopped him from doing it. And who is Frodo to decide who lives or dies? And let's see. So he challenges Frodo to throw the ring in the fireplace and get rid of it, but he can't as hard as he wants to. So he puts it back in his pocket, and Gandalf shows him doing that the ring already has a hold on him. But if it's been 15 years, yeah, that's a good long time. Because in the movie, it makes it seem like they immediately set out on their journey, but no, not really. So Sam gets pulled into the adventure literally through the window. And one of the things he wants a lot is just to see elves. So in chapter 3 is company. It's been 2 to 3 weeks, and Frodo still hasn't left yet. So Gandalf says to leave soon, and maybe in the fall. Frodo says, which is like months away. So he asks which way he should go, and they set along east towards Rivendell and to take Sam. But they don't want to leave too quickly to start rumors in the Shire and all of that. So Frodo sells Baggin, and he moves to Bucklebury, to a house at Chick Hollow. So that kind of is something he can use as an excuse to cover their tracks. So Gandalf hasn't returned by September for Frodo and Bilbo's birthday party. Because Frodo's still doing a birthday party for Bilbo, including that in his party. So they go through the end of the Shire and then onto a straight road. And this is where they hear their first horse hoofs. And they get off the road and encounter a black rider. So he stands there and sniffs and then leaves as a group of elves approaches. So Frodo and all the group meet and talk to the elves, and they ask them about the Black Riders. The elves invite them to travel with them to tell them about them and the rest at Woodhall. So they rest and they eat with the elves, and Frodo asks them about the Black Riders and what to do. And they give him a circular advice, like elves would, but to go on to Rivendell and don't talk to any Black Riders. Which, good advice. So when they take a shortcut through the mushrooms, and the group wakes up and they eat breakfast before heading out to Brandybuck. And Frodo decides to crisscross the land to get there and avoid any Black Riders. But they see a black figure on horseback, which we later find out, which is probably Strider. And wait for him to leave before moving again through the bushes and brambles. So they come to an opening, and they see that they've gone too far south, which is a theme. They either go too far south, east, or west, and have to go back. And they get to an open field and get to Mr. Maggot's farm, who Pippin knows, and Bamfurlong. So they get invited to dinner, and they stay, and Mr. Maggot says he'll take them in the wagon to the ferry, which would save them time. And he remembers Frodo from trying to steal mushrooms when he was a kid. They meet a horse rider at the entrance to the ferry lane, and it ends up being Merry, and he tells them that he's been looking for him. So in Chapter 5, A Conspiracy Unmasked, the group takes a ferry down the river, and they get off and walk the rest of the way to Frodo's new house at Crick Hollow. So they put their packs down and take some baths. And they talk about the Black Riders and more about Frodo's plans to leave. And Merry tells Frodo about his plan and what he knows to Frodo's surprise. And he also knows about the ring and how Frodo means to leave without them, but they're like, you're not leaving without us. So Frodo decides to leave at daylight, and they go up through the old forest to avoid the road and anyone who might see them leave for a little while. So in the next chapter, they end up meeting Tom Bombadil, which I didn't know about this character. So in the old forest, they go in and the trees start moving and blocking their path and rerouting them and doing weird things, and they get turned around, and here we meet Tom Bombadil, and he saves Merry from the willow tree that sucked him in and then invites him to eat at his house, which is nice. So at Tom Bombadil's house, they arrive, and they're greeted by his wife, Goldberry, who seems to float across the room because she's so elegant. So Tom is the master of nature, but he doesn't own it. He's like its master. He said he was there when the first acorn fell and before hobbits and all of that. So he told them about the forest and Old Man Willow and the Barrow Wights, and to avoid them on their next part of the trip. And that he knew about hobbits and when men first appeared. So he asked to see the ring, and he takes the ring, and it has no effect on him. He puts it on, and he doesn't disappear. He can see Frodo when Frodo slips it on and walks across the room. So he tells them to leave in the morning and go on the west side of the Barrow Downs, but gives them a short rhyme to say if they get in trouble and need his help. So they cross into the Barrow Downs, and they stop on a hill with a wide top that's flat and hollow inside like a shallow saucer. So they go inside, and they come farther than they thought. So they stayed longer than they should have, and they ate and they slept, dilly-dallying. And so when they wake up to leave, a fog rose up really quick. And then Frodo hears like help from the rest of the group, and they disappear. So they're taken down into the Barrow Wights' chambers. And they finally take Frodo, and he's down there chained, but he finds the strength to get up and cut one of their hands off. And he says the rhyme that Tom Bombadil told them to say, and Tom comes and saves them, and he tells them that donkeys were smarter than they were because at least donkeys ran from danger. So I was like, burn. So Tom ends up taking them to the edge of Bree, so they don't get in any more trouble. And then he goes home. So they finally get to the Prancing Pony. And here they check in, and the people of Bree were descendants of the first man who wandered into the West. So they were friendly with elves and all the other races in Middle Earth, and which was different from other big folk. So hobbits and the people in Bree lived together and were friendly with each other. So they were taken to a small parlor at the Prancing Pony to freshen up and before being taken to their rooms, but they were invited by the other guests to hang out. So they take part in the company with the other guests, and they start telling stories and singing songs and not laying low like they should have. And here Frodo notices the stranger, so he goes over to Strider and asks who he is and what he's doing. And Strider tells him he needs to watch his friend before he gives out his Baggins name. So Frodo gets on a table and starts dancing to draw attention, but he ends up slipping and the ring slips on, and everybody in the inn is like kind of like, whoa, what the heck happened? And it causes a big commotion. So the innkeeper warns him that if he has any more tricks to tell him, but he also tells him he needs to talk to him later because he said something else that he forgot came to his mind. So Strider meets the hobbits back in the parlor in chapter 10, and he tells them who he is and that Gandalf told him to look out for the hobbits and Frodo, and that he needs to join them on their journey. And he tells them they needed to be more careful and they should have laid low, of course. And he tells them the enemy has eyes everywhere and operatives, and Bill Ferry, who would sell info about them. So Mr. Butterbur returns and tells him he forgot to give Frodo a letter from Gandalf because he's absent-minded. And now he was afraid that Gandalf might turn him into something unseemly. So the letter tells where Gandalf is and where he went, and to trust Strider and to head to Rivendell. So Strider tells him that he is Aragorn and pulls out the broken blade hilt to show. So they stay in the parlor and they don't sleep in the rooms for fear that the Black Riders know where they are. So Aragorn revealing who he is and showing the blade happens a lot sooner in the book. So in chapter 11, A Knife in the Dark, this happens just like it does in the movie where the Black Riders reach Bree and Frodo's home at Crick Hollow while Fatty Bulger is there. And they surround the house and they break in, and but Fatty escapes and the hobbits sound an alarm, and the riders they go away because the ring isn't there. And at the end, Frodo's having a dream about hooves and he wakes up, and like in the movie, the Dark Riders attack the room, but they can see. So they go over to inspect after that happens. So they pack up to leave, but their ponies were let loose and they lost a lot of their surprise. And Strider leads them through the marshes on the way to Rivendell. So here they light a couple of fires over the day to eat and tell stories while they rest. They have a fire at night and they notice figures moving in the night, and it's Dark Riders on their trail. So the Dark Riders come upon them out of the night after a story by Strider, and Strider tells them to grab some sticks with fire at the end. Because like in the movie, it's like he tells them that they're reckless for starting a fire at night, but here they have a fire at night and it's kind of like no big deal. So Frodo slips the ring on and he can see the 5 Dark Riders and the main king clearly, and he pulls his own sword. So they come up on Frodo and he stabs the king in the foot and reaches in his pocket and puts his hand around the ring. Now, when he stabs the king in the foot, then it harms Frodo because it destroys the blade and the pain goes all the way up into his shoulder. So Frodo removes the ring and he reappears, and the group is surprised. So Strider returns from trying to see about the Black Riders' movements and tells them to boil water and put Frodo by the fire, and he's going to put some water and herbs on Frodo's wounds. So for now, the Black Riders have retreated, but now they know where they are. So he looks at Frodo's sword and sees that it's like withered, and he says some strange elven words, I assume, over it and the sword hilt, and he just then pulls some herbs out and boils with the water and puts on Frodo's wounds. So they pack the next morning and put Frodo on a pony because he can't walk. And once again, this is a long time frame of 5 days where they're traveling and Frodo's getting worse. And then he gets a little better in the daytime, but he gets worse at night. So they come to the river Horwell and to get back on the main road. And they come to the last bridge to cross the river, and they see no Black Riders, but Strider finds an elf stone in the middle of the bridge. So they cross the bridge fine, and they go off the road again, but Strider leads them too far north, and they need to go back south to get to Rivendell. So they follow a path to get to an old troll hole, and they look around to go inside to see if it's safe, but they want to make sure, so they do some looking around first to make sure there's no trolls around. But Merry and Pippin see a couple of trolls, but it turns out that they've actually been turned to stone, so they're not a threat. So they eat and rest, and Sam sings a song about trolls to entertain them. So in the afternoon, they head back towards the ford to meet an elf, Glorfindel, who's been looking for them. So he helps Frodo with his wound and looks at the sword hilt too. And he takes the lead in leading them to Rivendell, but the Dark Riders attack. So he puts Frodo on his horse, and he's sent ahead across the river. So the Dark Riders hesitate, and Frodo feels them calling out to him to wait, like telepathically, and to give them the ring, and that they'll take him to Mordor. And as they're crossing the river starts to rush and washes the Dark Riders away. So all that happens just in the first half of the Fellowship of the Ring. And just the time frame that it happens over surprises me. But it's just like kind of one thing to the other. But I'm really enjoying the book. I'm interested to see what other differences and changes there are than the movies as I go forward. And if I missed anything, or if there's anything that I should go back and look at, let me know in the comments. And yeah, I'll talk to you later. Bye.